This is his first career start. And the good news for Rickie Collins is that this is a Duke defense that is gettable. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say it's an easy defense. They don't have any good players. We should totally discount them, totally disrespect them. No. This is still an ACC opponent, and we'll go over a couple of difference makers on that Duke defense that we need to keep an eye on, and especially Rickie Collins needs to keep an eye on. But that being said, of ACC defenses, Duke has not exactly been great at stopping the run or stopping the pass, which are really the only two aspects of a defense. Here are the stats for you for Duke. Just a general overview of this defense, okay? Total yards, they allow 414 a game. That is 14th in the ACC. Rushing yards allowed, 153 a game. That is 14th. Pass yards, 260 a game. That's 13th in the ACC. And scoring, they allow 32 points a game. That is last in the conference so far in the early going of 2025. Let's talk about the rushing aspect of this first. And I think Syracuse football in this game should be able to run the football against this Duke defense. Last week, NC State's Hollywood Smothers, their running back, he ran for 123 yards on over 7 yards a carry. But what's really interesting is the fact that a couple of quarterbacks already on Duke against Duke, have been able to accumulate a lot of rushing yards. Now, to Duke's credit, last week, C.J. Bailey only ran for 9 yards against this Duke defense. But as we just said, with Hollywood Smothers, they were able to get it going with their running backs rather than their quarterbacks. So if you're Syracuse, this is a game where you can really lean into Rickie Collins' mobility. I'm not going to sit here and say Rickie Collins is Mike Vick, but he is pretty mobile, and we know that he can use his legs, and we know he is a pretty good athlete. This could be the type of game where we see that mobility in action. And if Duke is somehow able to contain Rickie Collins' legs, well, then they still got to worry about Yassine Willis and Will Nixon running downhill on them. So this is a game where I look at for Syracuse and say, just like you did against Clemson in the early going, where they established a running game, I think they should be able to do that against this Duke defense. And if they can do that, which is a big if, it's not going to necessarily be easy, even though this Duke defense is gettable. If they can do that, this could really open up Syracuse's passing attack. And you really want to do that, especially with a backup quarterback making their first ever collegiate start. Cannot stress that enough for Rickie Collins. From a passing angle, again, the main key is establishing a run in this game, which we'll dive deeper into later on this week. But that's one of the big keys. If Duke can somehow manage to stop the run of Syracuse football, force Rickie Collins into second and third and long situations, that could be trouble for Syracuse football. Now, I mentioned to you earlier that we were going to go over a couple of players on Duke that you definitely need to be aware of in this game. A couple of standouts, if you will. And look, we don't have all day, so I'm not going to sit here and go through their entire roster. So just a couple of standouts for you. First, a senior cornerback by the name of Chandler Rivers. This is someone that is definitely going to be playing on Sundays. Okay? Let's just throw it out there. He is an NFL talent right now. I checked a couple of mock drafts. I see this guy based on the mock drafts that I'm looking at online, which granted are not perfect. Maybe you found differently. Have him as a second, third round pick. So this is not just someone who is an NFL talent. This is someone who could be potentially starting NFL games as soon as 2026. He was a 2025 preseason All-American, preseason All-ACC, 2024 All-American, first team All-ACC. Throwing his way, probably not a good idea if you are Syracuse football, but the good news for Syracuse football is we have talked about it plenty of times on this show already. They got plenty of weapons. So if you see that Justice Ross Simmons is lined up one-on-one against Chandler Rivers, Okay, well, they might not be able to throw to Justice Ross Simmons on that play. Well, Jonte Cook could be available one-on-one, right? Or any of the other weapons that Syracuse football does have at its disposal. But that's one player to definitely keep an eye on, a standout in Chandler Rivers at cornerback. Number two, a senior defensive end, a pass rusher in Vincent Anthony. He is having a breakout season for the Duke Blue Devils. Heading into this year, Vincent Anthony had 7.5 career sacks, which is not bad. And I believe he was coming off a 5-sack season in 2024, if memory serves correct, when I was doing the research heading into this podcast. But through 4 games in 2025, Vincent Anthony leads the ACC in sacks with 5 of them. So Rickie Collins and this offensive line, they definitely need to be aware of where Vincent Anthony is on the field at all times, because he's going to be rushing off the edge. You might want to double team him as much as humanly possible. Can't expect that every single down and distance he's going to be double teamed. But if and when Duke decides to bring 4 or less, or 5 or less, really, he should have multiple guys on him, whether it's chipping with a tight end, using a running back for help, or just sliding the protection to have multiple offensive linemen on him. Bottom line is, a guy like Vincent Anthony definitely need to be aware of where he is on the field, because he can get to the passer as good as anyone in the ACC.